Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Yashwendra Singh, Executive Editor of ETCIO and the moderator for this extremely relevant session on rebuilding customer experience strategy post COVID 19, organized jointly by ETCIO and Adobe. The COVID 19 pandemic has changed the way we look at customer experience management. As all potential customers are working from home and leveraging digital platforms extensively, it's important for retailers, e-tailers, and platform-based companies to relook at their customer experience management strategy. In this panel discussion today, we have with us technology and marketing experts who will throw more light on how to leverage technology in creating a differentiated customer experience. Please welcome our panelists for the day. We have with us Mr. Kashyap Vadapalli, CMO Pepperfry, Mr. Sagar Bokeh, CMO Tata Consumer, Mr. Prashant Verma, Head Marketing Grofers, Mr. Ashok Cherian, CIO Page Industries, Mr. Kunal Mehta, CIO Raymonds, Mr. Khushru Mistry, CIO Eureka Forbes, Ms. Namrata Mahindra, CDO Aditya Birla Group, and last but not the least, Mr. Vikrant Niyogi, Product Specialist, Data and Insights, Adobe. Welcome, panelists. I'll set the ball rolling with you, Mr. Kashyap. The challenges today is that customer expectations are sky high, and those expectations have to be met across a growing and diverse set of channels like desktop, mobile, email, social, chat, etc. Against this backdrop, how should enterprises reimagine their customer experience management strategy? Mr. Kashyap.
Uh, Even before this scenario, okay, a lot of this was coordinated uh, in a kind of a multi-channel format. So when people would buy, they would get obviously confirmations via SMS and email. When the delivery is scheduled, they would get pre-delivery calls. They would get pre-delivery information via SMS. Obviously, once the assembly etc. is done, in our case because we grow furniture, we obviously take the feedback from them on on digital devices so that we're continuously getting a feedback loop in terms of how we are performing, etc. So I think all the various channels were equally important. But one of the things that we've noticed is uh, customers are therefore are still wary to go out and interact with us in our stores. And even when we are actually seeking to fulfill orders for them that they have placed online, customers are wary. They're asking us questions about how safe is it, and what are the various kind of precautions that have been taken, etc. So I think just in terms of managing their expectations in this kind of a time has become super important for us. Customers who are engaging with the brand at this point in time, are engaging against all odds. They're engaging against the sentiment. They're also engaging because they need something very deeply now. This is not a time when people are doing casual browsing. They want to set up their home offices, etc., and and it's an immediate need, and they're engaging with us. But at the same time, there is anxiousness in terms of how the entire experience will pan out.
Sure.
So some of the things that we did in terms of just shifting the narrative is uh, put a lot more focus on. Obviously, we're a digital first organization, but also we've moved into a lot more digital first approach. So all of our studio footprint, our stores, all of the consultants there started interacting with customers through video calls and phone calls. We launched a phone buy on phone program, half to the lockdown periods earlier, which we didn't have. So people could actually, as they're browsing the site, they could, if they have a doubt, they could call a number, and they could have interactions, and that is something that has scaled tremendously.
Sure.
The customers using that has been huge. The call inflow has been fantastic, and these
Sure.
are all serious players. Obviously,
Right.
even when people buy, they are reaching out to us to understand what are the precautions we have taken in the warehouse, and in as we are delivering it, about the workforce that is delivering, how well are they sanitized and checked to ensure that they're all safe and hygienic. So all of that information we started building in programs to talk to customers, obviously on our own website, through emailers, through social media, but also through small delivery videos that we've done, which we are sharing with customers to show them the precautions that we are taking, both from the warehouse perspective and also in the customer's homes. So I
Sure.
think the big trend for us really is addressing and allaying the customer's concerns and doing that in a scalable fashion, increasingly using video interactions. That has become extremely a trend for us as far as I can see.
Sure, Mr. Kashyap. Moving on to you, Mr. Ashok Cherian. You come from the apparel industry, right? You manufacture jockey. How do you see the current scenario? Is there a challenge for your industry? Because, as compared to, say, books or electronics, people would want to touch and feel and probably try apparel before buying it. So how are you reimagining customer experience strategy as people increasingly work from home, buy from home?
Yeah, actually, as far as we are concerned, it's a twin-edged sword, I would say, because the whole work from home has actually opened up a plethora of opportunity for people like us, because our product range is pretty much, smart casual. I would say casual work from home, leisure wear, athleisure wear. Those are some of our key product ranges. So actually, it is the need of the hour, and looking like with the work from home, it is actually it's something which almost everyone wants. The whole challenge now is to connect it to the customer. I think some of the real challenges what we are actually facing is according to us really nothing has changed in terms of the fundamentals. Customer delight is something which we all are trying to address, and even today, yesterday, and tomorrow. I keep focus point or end point. Okay, not cold. So, but the thing is, how do we actually partly address our pain points is going to be a challenge for good times at least. And the some of the thing is what we are actually trying to focus on. How do we actually get more traction on customer touch point to make things easy for them? How do we actually get our exclusive outlets onto a safe to shop environment where where we publish what we are actually how if it will be the experience. And obviously, as you said, trials is actually a big problem, and it's not just trials. Some of the return process, the discovery process, all these expectations. So we are reworking on the whole thing. How do we manage this whole expectation? And also the share probably has a little bit of relook in terms of what is the priority in terms of so prioritize the the need. So this is actually I think it's pretty cross-cutting everywhere. Everyone will have a similar type of product, and we are also going through this journey of making it more digital, making it more personal, making it as seamless and safe. Yes. How do we actually get people not crowd? How do we actually get things more seamless? Is something which is actually opening up new opportunity. And interestingly, another trend which has actually come out is the shop nearby. So that shop nearby concept is really working. I think it will be working for everyone. So the people who have got a larger footprint is going to actually benefit. I think because the people who wants to go to the mall and all those
Sure.
opportunities are going less. Have a shop nearby. You don't have to travel. So it's going to actually get into advantage for people like. And
Sure.
definitely we have around 1,000 plus shops. This is multi-brand where our products are available. So those
Right.
are actually working for us, and
Sure.
the whole thing is actually getting delivered in a manner that the customer pain points are
Sure.
actually minimized.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Cherian, there for those inputs. I'll now move to Vikrant. Vikrant, I'm sure you must be interacting with lots of e-tailers, retailers. What do you see? Do you think they are, they are faced with opportunities here, challenges here in today's times? And what is the need of the hour when it comes to, reimagining customer experience management strategies for them?
Thanks, Yash. I think that's a very pertinent question. And like Mr. Kashyap as well as Ashok said, they are completely reimagining how customer experience look like. And various brands that I talk to, I think there has been a fundamental shift in the whole definition of customer experience, right? Earlier we used to say that I want to deliver, relevant, personalized, delightful experiences to our customers in real time, right? Today, what has changed post the pandemic is we are seeing a lot of our customers focus on what is critical for my customers. And as Kashyap was talking about what changes for my customer, how can I make the experience much more seamless? is something that we are seeing a lot of brands embark upon, right? I was talking to one of the grocery retailers a couple of days back, and they made a very interesting observation, right? They said that I need to know my customer again, right? So, which is a big step change from what retailers have been used to doing. They have, mastered the art of offline transactions, doing a lot of modeling analysis on that data, and really leveraging the data to predict to a certain degree of accuracy what could be the customer behavior, what could be the sales that are happening in the stores or catchment areas. But now with this new digital world, everything is changed, right? It's a new channel that they need to reach out to, new customer personas they need to engage with, and it's a completely uncharted territory, right? So that's been one of the learnings for some of our brands, is how they can reinvent themselves and unlearn some of the things that they've been doing in the past, right? So with that, I think there are three focus areas where I see a lot of our customers focus on. One is digital adoption and self-service, right? Answering questions as to what are the customer journeys of the future for them. How can you ensure that my customers stay loyal to my brand in the future? Right? How can I drive that towards my business? The second aspect is completely shifting from the brick and mortar strategy to online, e-commerce, even experimenting with model like buy online and pick up in store, right? So several of these brands are experimenting with these models and then deciding what works best for them. But third and most importantly, they are reimagining how customer 360 degree looks for them, because now that things have changed, new channels have emerged. This is a new factor that is underpinning a lot of their customer experience strategies going forward, right? So if a lot of people say that data is the new oil, right? I would say I think this has now become data as the new oxygen for us. I think that's really critical for surviving in this business. I think that's how I see things change post the pandemic.
All right, great. Moving on to you, Namrata ma'am. Like we've just discussed, customer expectations are right at the zenith. So how do we serve customers, anytime on any channel? How do we make this shift, navigate from offline to online at these times?
So I think there are a couple of different areas to look at. The first is customers traditionally have been used to, the offline channels. How much of that experience can you actually replicate online? The more seamless you can make it for the customers, the better it will be. The greater the affinity of the customer with that brand, the more seamless the experience it would be for them. Now, if I look at the industry that I come from, which is predominantly chemicals, fertilizers, and insulators, these are largely B2B. The fertilizer industry also has a B2C element to it. But now we increasingly see e-commerce come into play, even in the B2B segment. This was unheard of in the e-commerce space, at least in India, till not so long back. So given that context, I think with COVID, there is going to be an acceleration on the e-commerce path for the B2B sort of, distributors, retailers that we have in the ecosystem. However, they want to have a replication of the same experience. So one is, how do you make that experience as consistent as possible with the offline channels? The second aspect is, what kind of virtual assistance can you provide them? Now, that may be in the form of virtual agents, it may be in the form of chatbots, it may be in the form of, certain other assets that you create, which could help bridge that connect, so that if a person comes online, they don't feel, I want to go back and pick up the phone and speak to, the sales executive that I've traditionally been used to speaking to, or want a face-to-face with him. So it's about, creating that comfort zone for them in the, in the online space, as one would have done in the off space. I think the third area is around communities. And I think it becomes extremely important because, the relationships so far have been very transactional with them. So loyalty, if you look at it from a B2B perspective, is yes, it's still very transactional. The loyalty factor does not exist. It's about, what is the level of transaction that you're doing. I think building in communities, building in, whether it's on the supply chain side or on the customer side, the affinity with a brand. Why should I buy Shaktiman brand of fertilizers versus any other fertilizer which is out there in the market? Would happen when I can find an alignment even in terms of the brand values and my own values that I have as a consumer, as a purchaser, as a distributor. And for that, can I create communities who have same set of values, who have the same set of interests, who are driven by the same purpose or outcome. I think that would become extremely important as we move forward, to make sure that those online communities that we are forming, those offline communities do exist. So they network together, they meet from time to time, whether it's the sales meets or whether it is other meets that they have. But how do we reproduce that in a B2B environment? We've done it for the longest period of time in the B2C environment. How do you create those kind of communities in the B2B environment, so that there is a go-to point, you're solving their problems for them. How do you create that connect with them in terms of being in touch? So even during the COVID times, we actually reached out to all our customers and our entire supplier and our extended supplier network, and we had video conferences as we have with our internal teams. We connected with them, we tried to understand what their problems were, and creating that connect and that collaboration is going to be the other aspect which is going to become important. And a lot of that collaboration is going to happen online. We haven't met either our customers or our supplier base in the last 3.5 months, but all of that collaboration, all that seamlessness which has happened, whether it's on the transportation logistics side for our customers or on the supplier side, has all happened sort of collaborating online. And finally, I would think that there would be a lot more of I think listening, which has traditionally not happened in the B2B environment. If we want to make successful B2B journeys, if we want to remap the customer journeys, I think we haven't listened to our customers in the B2B environment. We haven't gone out as you do in the B2C environment, go out, listen to your customers, do the consumer insighting. That has not happened at the scale and in the way it is typically happened in the B2C environment. I see that coming to life. I see that getting accelerated big time because there are no more playbooks to go by, even for the B2B relationships. So I would say that would be a huge change which would happen as we move forward.
Great. Sure, ma'am. Thanks a lot for bringing out the distinction between B2B and B2C in such times. I'll move on to Prashant now. Prashant, you come from a born digital company, and I'm sure you don't have the problem of shifting from offline to online. But still, what comes to your mind? What would you like to suggest to a company that wants to transition increasingly from offline to online in such times?
So thanks everyone for your views. See, what I see this is a pivotal moment for e-commerce in India. There's a natural adoption which is happening, as we can see, similar to what happened with SARS in China in 2003, and the e-commerce industry that boomed post that. I believe that it's a time when brands need to focus on finding meaningfulness and purpose rather than differentiation. Right? It's important to not show how different we are, but at the same point of time, how can we be relevant and trustworthy to the audience, considering the consumer behavior that we're observing right now. Due to the economic climate, people are being thrifty. We observed a behavior where consumers are trading down, hunting for deals on categories where they previously did not. So that's a B2C behavior which we're seeing today. Also, a rise in the shopper archetype. And at the same point of time, there are plenty of concerns with consumers around safety as well as hygiene. So I think in these times, I think it's very important for any org to start delivering value to consumers. At the same point of time, identifying and prioritizing their respective customer sets. To me, I see it to build trust in migration from offline to online will be extremely important for anyone who's trying to change the game. For us, we see it as, let's say, I would call it as, let's say, building a trusted relationship on 3 points. The first is to educate consumers. I think it's extremely important for that transition to be seamless. The path to purchase is shifting from let's say, a pure offline mode to a pure online mode. What's happening is that there are the choices of information available when it comes to in the pre-purchase part to purchase. That's available absolutely online, be it on social channels, digital channels. Right? It's completely online. The purchase itself is online, right? And the purchase experience is online. And the post-purchase experience, it's only the delivery that happens at the point of delivery. That's the only physical interaction. And beyond that, every post-purchase experience is also done online on all assets. What I would see is that there are 3 primary pillars for me to build a trusted relationship with customers at this point of time. I think firstly, it's important to educate customers. For us, it's about helping them adapt and embrace to the new normal of doing grocery shopping online. For us, it's important to ease their transition process. For this to happen, like we also observed, there were 20% of our customers who we acquired during the lockdown period were actually first-time online shoppers, not first-time online grocery shoppers. Right? We went absolutely deep down in the socio-economic class. For us, it was very important to then enable assisted shopping for them, because they've never shopped online, right? To build assisted shopping and scale also happened all of a sudden. So important for us to build chatbots to solve their quick concerns, because there are a lot of this to understand with this particular consumer set. So that's something which happened. Customizing the onboarding journeys, I think that's something which Vikrant had touched base. The kind of data which we have today, I think the access is, we can know someone who's coming from what sort of a hyperlocal profile or what kind of socio-economic segment. I think it's very important to do that. The second thing which I would say is empathize with customers. Apart from the education part, it's empathizing is very important. I think solve for their fears, solve for their anxieties. If they need safety, if they need to save, empower them with assets which they can actually save. And the last thing what I would say is listening to consumers and empowering with innovative solutions by being agile to solve the real world problem. Like, for example, we saw that when people end up shopping, we innovated with features like Edit Your Order, in which someone can add any extra items in their order till let's say 8 hours before delivery. So I think that's something. And in a grocery basket, it's not like 1 or 2 items per order; it's 25 items. Yeah, so I think, and those are the kind of things which an organization needs to do. That basically educate your consumer in the shift, empower them, and empathize with them.
Sure. Vikrant, do you echo their sentiments? Like Prashant said, it's really critical to build trust. And then, as Namrata just said, understanding customers more in the B2B space.
No, absolutely. I was absolutely echo what Prashant said. And, I was talking to other purely online retailers, and for them as well, there have been so many first-time online shoppers that have, transacted in this period. Their core belief is that there is no turning back, right? And if you think about it, as there is a threshold for doing or a barrier that is there for doing the first online transaction, and once you break that barrier, I think it becomes native to you. It becomes like a habit for an individual to do the transaction online, right? So those are some things that I have heard as well, and I believe that the things once we have are used to this way of transacting online, especially because it is convenient, easy, and most importantly safe for us to do these transactions in the digital world. I think there is no returning back. So I definitely echo what Prashant is saying.
Great, Vikrant. So Sagar, I'll now move on to you. This pandemic has changed several assumptions and business models. What changes do you see in your vertical in the FMCG industry? Because FMCG products are predominantly sold offline. How do you see the situation now? Your thoughts here, Sagar.
So I think FMCG, as you would say, largely because of the nature of the category, the lot of purchase happens online, happens offline. But I think what is more important is what has changed about the consumers during this time. I think fundamentally, a couple of things which have changed about the consumers. First thing is that I think the consumers are more anxious about the future, about what's happening around. And the second thing is that there are a lot of concerns around the safety. So for FMCG brands, I think there are two things which are hence the implications. First thing I would say from the consumer behavior point of view, there is inversion of pyramid. What inversion of pyramid would mean that most of the time when you are selling a day-to-day use product, you would say that the best way to really get a consumer is to really target that customer at the higher level needs, because that's where the differentiation of the brand starts mattering. But what is happening is that consumer is wanting to understand how safe the product is. Is the product going to make a difference in terms of the nutrition need? Is the product going to make a difference in terms of the safety needs? In terms of the hygiene, I think the way we communicate has to change. That's one fundamental change as a marketer that we have to do. The second important change that has happened, which is again because of this particular, which is essentially coming from the same trend, is because of the need to educate the consumer and the anxiety around. I think the solution, empathizing with the consumer. I think Prashant spoke about this point, that educating the consumer and about so there are various issues, like say for example, safety is one thing, psychological needs are another thing. So we created a property called as Beat the Lockdown, wherein we spoke to a nutritionist, we spoke to a yoga instructor, and help consumers solve their problems. Then the whole thing about there is a revival in terms of the day-to-day traditional wisdom. So how can we really leverage on that? I think there is a need, there is a scope for the brands to really engage. On the channels, I think consumers really want to interact with the brands directly, and to the extent the whole business model where they say that we will always the selling would happen through someone else, I think that needs to be rethought. I would say those are the changes post the pandemic that has happened in FMCG industry.
Sure. Let me come to Mr. Mistry now. Sir, data has been referred to as the new oil. Vikrant, however, referred to it as the oxygen. But I feel if data is the new oil, analytics is its refinery. In what ways can true value of data be unlocked so as to accelerate organizational benefits and generate greater value for an enterprise in today's times? There's loads of data coming in through different channels. How can it be leveraged to add to the top line, bottom line?
It depends upon how you first and foremost generate the data, okay, which is most important in today's day and age. Also, at the same time, you have to look at the data and how are you going to do the analytics behind it, okay? That is also very important. And I'll explain this to you, okay? Once you have the data, let's assume you have the data of all your customers, which you basically try and do a 360-degree view. The fact of the matter is, when you're analyzing the data, specifically in a COVID-19 situation which we have, and when you interface with the customers, make sure, as I think Prasad said it, make sure you do it with empathy. Because the COVID situation today has put a certain gap in between how you communicate with the customers, okay? So trying to utilize that data, okay, and ensuring even small little things like tone and motive can actually change the customer's perception of how your relationships are with the brand. So in today's day and age, I think the manner in which you utilize the data, you collect it, you assimilate it, and to a large extent, you're also listening to what your customers are saying, okay? And that is, I think, extremely important, that the communication channel which you utilize to communicate back with the customer is with empathy, with understanding, and also utilize the data in order to show that you care. And I think that will form a very, very long-standing bond and relationship, specifically because the current situation is, if there's a problem, lock it down. The connect is missed out. So I think all of these points put together, if you utilize the data correctly, but of course there's a lots of points of data, and I think social media is a very, very important part, okay?
Sure.
Communicating through those channels is in fact more important than first being listened before we communicate with the customer. So I think the analytics part of it, it's all great stuff, but I think if we don't do it with empathy, customers are going to be lost.
Sure, sir. I'll now include Mr. Kunal Mehta in the conversation. Kunal, how critical is data for you, for Raymond's? And how are you leveraging it to unlock more value for the company?
So, we've got about 6.5 million active customers across the length and breadth of the country, being such an old brand. And it's even more complicated for us because we don't have just one format, right? We've got multiple formats that we deal with. So it's the same customer who goes to buy his matted suit and then also buys a jacket for his cocktail, and goes and buys a polo t-shirt for his, a Color Plus t-shirt for his, golf matches. And then the same customer also goes and buys a Park Avenue shirt for his daily office wear. So you've got the same set of customer who's actually, going through different formats of your stores and behaving differently, right? So that's the other way of looking at it for us, that when the same customer comes to different formats, how do we treat that customer? And it's very important to understand that psychology because he's buying it for different occasions. Again, with the whole COVID situation, being such a important brand and, having so much of trust of your customers, hygiene, safety becomes very important. People go today to a store when they select their fabric. People want to touch, they want to feel it, all of that. Now, in the current situation, how do you try and avoid that? How do you not let customers' safety become an issue? So those are the other things that we had to take care of and understand, change our complete SOPs across our stores. 80% of our stores are franchisee stores. So to not just train our own store staff, but also the franchisee staff, right? So we've been doing all of that. Again, for us, all this time, the focus was really on opening more and more stores. That is what we wanted. I mean, last year we opened about 700 stores, in a matter of 1 year. So it was quite crazy. And now all of a sudden, everyone's talking about survival in the offline sector and how do you get omni-channel and all of that, which for us was just another medium to reach out to our customers. All of a sudden, the focus has shifted to e-commerce. You want to engage more and more with your customers through other social media platforms. So there has been a huge shift paradigm in terms of how the management looks at sales, how the customers want to engage with you now. People don't want to visit the stores, but because they know your brand, they know the fit, they are okay to go online, pick it up and move on. So we've used these last 3 months in kind of building our entire e-commerce platform and engaging with customers in many different ways. We've had health discussions with them. So a lot of different engagements have also taken place during this period. I think it's going to be very important to continuously keep engaging with them, give them the assurance that they are available across different mediums, across different platforms. The experience of what they had offline, you need to bring that online also now, because that's what the customer looks out for in a Raymond store. So this is where we are with the whole customer.
Sure, Kunal. Right, Vikrant, would you like to add anything here to what Kunal, Mr. Mistry just said? Data, as we just talked about, is so critical, whether it's an online retailer or brick and mortar. Any thoughts here?
Sure, absolutely. So I think to be whatever I've heard from different brands is right. There has been severe cost pressure, right? That has been one of the fallouts of this pandemic in terms of marketing costs or operational costs. But the plus side of this, as I talk to several customers and prospective customers, is that they are becoming more data-driven in terms of the decision making, right? Which means that every new initiative or any project that we need to embark upon requires a thorough analysis in terms of ROI, in terms of benefits or business cases, right? So and we are seeing more and more data-driven operating models being embedded or into their business as they would want to see it going forward, right? So we've seen a lot of data initiatives being kicked off because of this reason, and it means a different thing for different verticals. So if I want to break it down for the different panelists who are from different roles and from different verticals, whether it is traditional FMCGs or whether it is brick and mortar retailers or it is purely online businesses. I think it impacts them a little differently in terms of how they are leveraging data and how they want to use this information to reach out to the customer or consumer in the most empathetic way, or as Prashant said, and Kashyap said as well, in terms of how they can make sure critical points of touch points are supported in whether it's unassisted onboarding. But really, data becomes an underpinning strategy, like I said earlier, is what what I have heard is from different brands.
Sure, Vikrant. Sir, I'll come back to you, Mr. Kashyap. Sir, I would like to define CXM as orchestrating and personalizing the entire end-to-end customer experience, moment to moment. I know it's simple to say that, but it's really hard to do it. But as a CMO, how do you design, connect, deliver, and manage experiences across such wide and diverse channels and devices, and still maintain a singular voice throughout? the context, of the customer journey. How do you do that, sir, as a marketing head?
Sure. So, obviously, when you're thinking of designing, and let's break down the customer experience into 2-3 sections. Okay. So one part of the section is really the discovery part, when the customer is discovering your brand or your organization as part of fulfilling their needs. Okay. The second part is the interaction part, which is when the customer is interacting with you. It could be in a store, on Linking Road, or it could be on your app when they're taking a break during when they're in some other place, or it could be actually on the website when they're sitting and actually browsing, maybe with the family, and they're interacting with your website for taking decisions. And then the third part is obviously the bit around once the transaction is done, what kind of experience they're getting. So typically, an organization should present a unified picture across all 3 phases of interactions with the customer. So for us, from a marketing perspective, when I think about it, one of the things that I always try and do is when I'm targeting, my starting point is my existing customers. I look at my existing customers, try to derive personas from them, speak with partners who use data, all the large advertising platforms, etc., to figure out who are the similar people who are out there that I can target, and go to them with a certain message. And that message is true and authentic to my brand. Okay, so whether it is about value, whether it's about service, whether it's about variety that we are giving. So that's the message I take out. But I try and ensure that I'm targeting. I'm not just praying, but I'm actually targeting people who are similar to my already existing customers. So that my existing customers are loyal to me. I know that they like what I stand for. So I'm going out to the market also targeting those people. Once these customers land up on my own website, the thing that you need to keep common, how do you ensure that there is commonality, the customer experience is common, is that you don't promise one thing on a digital platform, digital social platform, and when they come to the site, they see something else totally. What you need to ensure is that the promise that you made out there is the exact same promise that you are delivering to here, and and once you deliver to it, you're able to fulfill it in the same way. I think the number one, the 2 strong pillars I would say that help us to do this. Number one is actually having a very clear picture of what is our true authentic service as a brand. What do we really stand for? Why do consumers interact with us? What is the value we deliver to their lives? That has to be the number one pillar around which we build our entire, we build our entire strategy. So that's the first pillar in terms of having common messages, common promises that we make to the customers. The second pillar is actually data. It is within, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, 10 million visits we have on our site every month. There is obviously going to be an extremely diverse set of people who are coming. And the thing here is you use data, real-time interactions. Obviously, we are capturing real-time interactions that the consumers are having with our pages. Who is browsing what amount of time are they spending? Are they wish listing things? Are they adding things to cart? What stage of customer buying funnel are they at? And using all those data points to go back to them and give them very personalized service. If a customer is bouncing off by going to different product groups, or is a customer diving deep into a product group, going up to the cart page and then bouncing, they need different approaches. And my next message to the customer should be different. So using data, tracking customer behavior, using data to target them very, very sharply makes the experience personalized. Staying true to the overall customer promise, the key 3 or 4 key pillars that we stand for as a brand, and keeping that consistent across the discovery phase, interaction phase, and fulfillment phase ensures that there is commonality of experience and we are able to fulfill the promise that we are making.
Great. Prashant, we would love to hear from you how Grofar ensures singular voice throughout the context of the customer journey. Please.
Sure. I think what we see is that at the heart of it all, I think as Kashyap also pointed out, the customer is always at the center. That's the first principle for any marketing organization. In a digital first business with a digital part to purchase in the mix, the journey can be mapped at each micro stage. I think what is important here is, first learning for me is we always have to stay true to the brand and translate that voice of the brand across the customer journey. To do that, marketeers need to focus, what they need to focus on is a deep understanding of the role of each channel, medium, or touch point, and where it comes in the respective customer lifecycle. So I think this is what we see overall. And for us, communication or advertising with consumers is not just for sales, but it's to maintain a two-way relationship. It's about engaging with customers. The first step here is to, again, define pillars of the brand, be it in terms of value or personality. Just for taking the example of Grofers, I mean, one very important learning for us during the lockdown period was the brand used to stand for trust. In order to provide safety to consumers, in order to let them know that we have their back, considering that we were an essential service. Secondly, as I had pointed out earlier, empathy was extremely important, and care for the customer comes first. I mean, in this case. And lastly, what we see is value. Value in terms of the kind of value-paid purchases which people make. Now, these brand pillars need to be translated across all touchpoints and channels, and across the part to purchase as well as the post-purchase experience. So, just to take an example, if safety was one of the brand pillars which we wanted to speak about, if I have to get somebody in, like just to borrow from what Kashyap pointed out, in the discovery phase, how one has to establish how Grofers is a safe place to purchase and the safety measures which we're taking through. Also use the voice of people who are already shopping. They bring in more trust. The voice of the people who actually end up delivering. There is a consumer who shops and there is a customer who goes and delivers, right? Using these real people voices. So that's one. Secondly, I think what also happens in this case is on the digital platform, when someone comes to actually purchase on the app, it's about reinforcing those safety measures. Post-purchase, it's about reassurance that, hey, whatever you've got in your little grocery bag, that's all safe. Yeah. And post that, I think on delivery, you also educate them on handling groceries, on handling the bag. I believe all of us here would be washing groceries when they come home, considering they've come from outside or leaving them inside for like a day or two and then picking them up. So education throughout the process and what part of the consumer life cycle is going through. I think all of that becomes extremely important. Secondly, I think cutting customers across cohorts. I think that becomes a very, very critical part of our voice mix. The second pillar of the brand, apart from trust and safety, was also value, providing value to these customers. It's important to find out who are these value seekers, and what categories are they seeking the most value, and also enable their life cycle, right from a digital channel from where you are getting them onto the platform, their journey onto the platform, and post purchase as well. On the amount of value which they've saved is also extremely critical for us.
Sure, Prashant. Vikrant, would you like to share your perspective here?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Yash, for bringing me in. I think I really like what Kashyap and Prashant said in terms of how they're looking at customer experience differently for their respective brands, right? I think just to share some perspective on how Adobe is working with each of people in the retail space differently, and how we are helping them translate customer experience for their business going forward is, let's take the example of starting with brick and mortar retailer, traditional retailer, right? What we're doing for them is really bringing in a lot of, bringing data together, right? Online data, transactional data, offline data, in-store data from new age technologies like beacons or voice assistants, all of that together. Because, and they were there in pieces and bits and silos in the past, but there was no concerted effort to do that today, right? And that's one of the big things that a lot of traditional retailers are embarking upon as we talk to them. If you talk about purely online retailers, like Kashyap and Prashant said, they have been digital first, right? They have been digital native. They have a strong data foundation in place. Where we are helping them is helping them scale, right? So as things are going to evolve and they're going to get more and more customers are going to transact online. How can they continuously evolve their customer experience technologies, strategies, and scale to the next level in terms of platforms that will help from a technology standpoint, right? Also helping them bring cost efficiencies along multiple places in the marketing, whether it is growth, retention, reactivation, performance, brand, any of these marketing touch points that are important from business. How can you really build a digital data layer that can help aid, and to Kashyap's point, not do any spray and pay marketing, but really relevant, personalized, in real time across channels of preference for the customers. Right. So I think this is where Adobe is definitely helping some of the customers in this space. And if I look at CPG, I think that's also an important chunk of people who are on the call today. Is they have been they don't need too much of first party data. They don't have too much of digital data. And as this world becomes more digital, as they continue to embark upon a lot of direct to consumer strategies, we are helping them navigate through this digital foundational steps, right, to really get to that level. Helping them with the commerce strategies. A lot of them are embarking on commerce strategies for the first time. So I think there are mix. Each of these verticals have their own nuances in terms of data strategies, customer experience management, and we are helping them differently given the current situation that we're seeing.
Sure. Great, Vikrant. I'll move on to Mr. Mistry now. Important pieces of data come from internal systems like CRM or ERP and also social media. What kind of a platform or a solution should technology leaders deploy that will help retailers, e-tailers in today's times?
A good backend CRM system, definitely, and a frontline application which is easy to navigate, which is adaptable to their needs, okay, is what I would consider important, and that is what we are doing. All right. Eureka Forbes is very direct to home kind of company. All right. All of a sudden, a COVID situation has placed the distancing between the consumer and the person and the salesperson to a very large extent, completely virtual in nature. So having a good CRM with a frontline application, which actually is interactive and which, in my opinion, has video capabilities, that's what we're doing. Okay. To bring in the touch points to the human, we are finding that kind of strategy is working out well for us because we always consider that we've been fighting viruses for the last 35 years of existence of the company. Okay, the COVID situation is completely different. People are still worried in this country, and rightly so, that if you have a COVID situation which is ongoing, and if you have a waterborne disease because of the monsoons coming in, India cannot fight two diseases at the same time. So I think that intermediate and immediate connects. So the back-end systems have got to be robust enough. The front-end systems have to be virtually viable, which provides that connect to the customer, in our opinion, is working for us. Okay, and that transcends across sales and service. Okay, because in the red hot areas where we are not able to go inside, even with the PPE equipment. Okay, also the technology which allows you to a large extent understand how the community is reacting to the COVID situation is also important, and that is also the kind of technology which we're trialing a lot right now. Because how do you emphasize a person to go into somebody's house knowingly that you may be okay? So we are providing things like every morning they are checked and there is a fit to smell certificate which is provided on the mobiles. Okay, that means I don't have a temperature, I don't have a cold, I don't have a cough. But how do you know the area where you're going into? Okay, the household may have a asymptomatic person. Okay, so effectively, these are the kind of technologies which we are trying to adopt, okay, which will allow the safety of our employees plus the safety of our customers at the same time. So even today, going in the houses with PPE equipment, gloves and everything. So it's a back-end system which basically caters for the environment of our customer, and it's a front-end application which can be utilized, okay, to a large extent to do remote, including DIY, do it yourself kind of technologies are getting utilized.
Sure, sir. Great. Namrata ma'am, your thoughts on this? What kind of a solution that can actually collate all data, throw up insights?
I think you need a good, obviously you need a good CRM system. You also need a good data layer that you've created. Oftentimes what becomes important is that when you're looking at putting these systems together, I think the processes are as important as the systems. Because like we all know, it's the quality of data. You can collect a lot of data, but it's the quality of data which is equally important. So what are your processes? The governance around that quality of data would become equally important. You could have different systems which because a lot of legacy organizations have the data sitting in silos. So it's also a function of then making sure that if you have some data which is still sitting in Excel sheets or is sitting in disparate systems, how do you get that under one roof and you have a single view of that customer? So I may have millions and millions of records of let's say my farmer database, but actually is that going beyond the profile data, or are other aspects of the quality of his farm land, or the soil quality, or other data that I may have collected about him, which would help me recommend the right fertilizer product, etc., to him, that is sitting in a disparate system. So how do I make sure that I get a unified repository of data, and also make sure that then data has there is a high level of data governance which is maintained, so that the quality of data is fairly rich. Also, I
Sure.
think collaboration plays an important role, because when you're looking at data, you can have a lot of first-party data, but also, as I said, in the case of let's say farmers, there is a lot of collaborative data that you could obtain to actually get a much richer understanding of the farmer, of the kind of crops he grows, of the kind of challenges that he faces, and therefore that then enriches your understanding, about what kind of solutions you can offer. So, from a data point of view, the systems are the traditional systems that you would have, but it's just about more around the governance of how do you maintain that. That becomes as important as the kind of
Sure.
systems that you have in place.
Sure. Vikrant, coming to you, is there a magic bullet? Is there a solution or a platform that can overcome all bottlenecks, all challenges that retailers face and take CXM to the next level?
All right. I hope that was not a trick question. I think there is, I wish I could say there is a magic bullet to this, and there are technologies that are available to solve some of these problems. But I think more importantly, we believe this is a journey, right? And there are multiple steps that you need to take as an organization to get to be your true authentic brand in terms of how you want to communicate with the customers, what is the experience that you want to deliver to them. And along these ways, I think there are technologies that play a role. CRM, I think, like some of our panelists mentioned earlier, Namita mentioned as well, and Kushu mentioned, in terms it becomes important, right? But there are also technologies like there's an operational CRM, there's an analytical CRM, and there's a differentiation between these two and how that can be leveraged to your advantage, right? So I would say that there are technologies available to help you along the way. And from Adobe standpoint, I think we believe it's a large ecosystem, and from our standpoint, we of course provide several technologies to help in the digital transformation, but we also work with a lot of partners. We have an integrated ecosystem of partners where we make sure we are able to solve the customer's challenges, right? When the end journey is towards customer experience, we work along with our partners where important or where necessary to make sure we are able to solve those challenges.
One final question before we open up the session for Q&A from attendees. My final question is to Kunal. Kunal, artificial intelligence, machine learning, they're all buzzwords today, and they've been leveraged in lots of areas. For instance, cybersecurity, where they are complementing humans in ensuring safety, security of organizations. What kind of a role can AI, ML play in the retail vertical?
So, we actually started using this about a year back. In the true sense. So we also, our majority of our business comes from B2B, right? Working with our wholesalers and the channel partners. What we started using AI and ML at that point of time was to really understand their buying patterns and help them decide what they need to buy, because they're businessmen. Typically, they go with their own gut feel. So we started using this data to understand what was the previous season buying patterns, etc. Help them define, be a partner with them in terms of sales and profitability and all that. Gain their confidence so that when the next season comes, they can trust you in terms of what should sell, what should not sell. This also kind of helped us improve our sales, right? Because the customer was now getting the right product at the right time, at the right place. So that was the other bit. It helped us improve our sales. It helped us improve our designs by speaking to the customers. We incorporated all of that into our CRM. So our CRM, our channel partner data, and our sales data, they all talk to each other now. And that's where we've really started using AI ML in a lot of ways. And it tremendously helps. I think most of the retailers now need to start working on having a single data lake, instead of having data in silos where your customer data is somewhere else, your B2B data is lying somewhere else, but you're missing out on the actual power of the data which is out there. So we've developed an in-house data lake that we have, or all the data consumed into that now. And that's really helping us, even during the COVID period, to kind of improve our sales.
Sure. I'll just request Vikrant to just share his final thoughts, and then we'll open up for Q&A from attendees. Vikrant, over to you.
So thanks, Yash. I think it was great to have this virtual seat at the panel full of senior leaders from retail, CPG businesses. Right. I think the key themes that I think came out were, I think while all the businesses on the panel today are different, I think there is a common theme around data. How that can be is important to their businesses, how that can be leveraged to communicate the true message or true authentic reason why the brand exists to their customers in a timely manner. And given the current situation, the focus or priority for several of them is to, be present where the consumer is, right? Make it much more easier and much more efficient for the consumer to do business with your brand. I think that's some of the things that, that came out correct from the discussion. So thanks so much.
Sure, Vikrant. Like I said, we'll now take questions from our attendees, and we've got lots of them already. The first one is for you, Vikrant. A lot of marketers want to set up 360-degree view of the customer, but that is complex, technically challenging setup. In absence of full 360-degree view, what are the marketers doing to leverage their current data? Does everyone in the organization or even the marketing department have a full understanding of their digital assets and know how to leverage them? Your take on this, please.
So I think marketing, a 360-degree view has pretty much been the holy grail of marketing for a pretty long time, right? In terms of, I understand my customer completely across my touch points, across every channel that they interact with me. And, we've seen a lot of brands, taking a lot of steps. I think Kunal suggested one of the approaches to build a data lake internally where all the data silos can be brought together, right? We have several solutions where we bring a lot of digital data together and offline information together for doing real-time communication, real-time engagement across multiple channels, right? So there are various ways to approach a customer 360. And what we are seeing more and more is this has become a very important topic in several of our customer brands, right? And I think they have now realized that given the digital inputs, the data that is coming in, which is structured, unstructured, semi-structured, it is important to make sense of this. So they are building a lot of what we call as customer data platforms internally to harness the power of this data. And this is a iterative process, right? As we get in digital data first or offline data later, and then second party, third party data. So there are a lot of initiatives that we are seeing a lot of brands take on to reach the ultimate goal of customer 360.
Sure, Vikrant. The next question is data privacy versus data security. Which one comes first and why? Mr. Mistry, would you like to take this up?
Data privacy, data security. You cannot judge which is more important and which is not. Both are important. If you take the pedal of one and you step on the pedal of the other, guess what? You lose out on one. So data privacy, I think in India, will gain a lot more importance as our version of the privacy will come into India. Data security needs to be maintained at all times. It's in my opinion, data security is like a toothbrush. Okay, we don't utilize it, we don't share it. Okay, with anybody, even your own spouse. So I think data security has got to be a hygiene which has to be maintained. Data privacy is a manner of speaking, and there's a lot of debate about it, even the things that Arul just said to that. So I think we have to maintain both of them, parallel understanding and implementation and securing it at the same time. So that's my opinion.
The next question is, how is technology like RFID being considered, especially with the way it helps in omni-channel fulfillment? Anybody here who's leveraging RFID and how? What benefits? Yeah, Kunal.
So we use it for our garmenting business a lot, because that's where we're making a lot of suits, jackets, etc. for a lot of international buyers, right? And so it's very important for them to understand where is the fabric coming from, where is the material coming from, at which phase is it in terms of the production readiness, and then actually moving on to different locations across different continents. So we use it quite efficiently when we have orders of 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 suits which are getting created, because that's also where you get the benefits of RFID considering its costs. That's where we really use it more so, but not so much in our other operations. Point. But we are considering using a lot of technology around patenting and things like that, because that's the other area we're looking at, whether the garment that you're buying or the fabric that you're buying, is it authentic in terms of whether it's a Raymond product or not. So those are the other technologies that we're looking at, but otherwise, yes.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kunal. That's all we have time for. The bottom line of today's session is that companies must make every interaction, every touch point, every experience one that moves their customers closer, not farther away. The reward for getting CXM right is massive ROI and lifetime relationships with your customers. I would once again like to thank all our panelists for those wonderful insights, and also our attendees for sparing time for this session. Thank you all once again, and have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.